Sapeurs, who gained worldwide recognition after their inclusion in the famous 2014 Guinness advert, are members of a unique fashion subculture that is found in the Congo, particularly the neighboring cities of Brazzaville and Kinshasa. Sapeurs are members of LASAP, an acronym of the French phrase Société des ambianceurs et des personnes élégantes, which literally translates to the Society of Ambiance Makers and Elegant People. LASAP may seem like a mere fashion trend, but it is so much more. Its roots can be traced back to the 1920s, as Congolese men sought to emulate the dandy style of their colonial masters. Since then, it has blossomed into a uniquely African tradition which stands entirely separate from its European predecessor. With its own style, habits, and rules, LASAP is more than just fashion. It is a lifestyle and an assertion of a bold, unashamed identity that allows its members to proudly showcase themselves to their communities in defiance of their difficult circumstances. To discover what makes LASAP so special and important for its followers, it is necessary to understand the subculture's unique history, habits, and membership, as well as the subversiveness that is foundational to the movement and a core part of its appeal. LASAP finds its origins in the Congo's colonial past. The Congolese elite of the 1920s emulated the dandy styles of their European masters and assimilated the fashion into their own wardrobes. It is likely that Congolese soldiers who fought in the First World War were hugely influential in bringing LASAP to the Congo. Having fought in Europe, they brought back items of clothing from their travels and showed them off to their countrymen. Part of the desire for Congolese men to wear European clothing was to challenge imperial narratives of racial hierarchy. By showing that they could sport dandy fashion just as well, if not better than their colonizers, they confronted the insidious notion of racial inferiority to Europe. Admiring both the French and Belgians they encountered, as well as the Congolese elite, young men in the Congo's urban centers embraced LASAP, challenging both racial and economic hierarchies by donning the fashions of the European and African elite. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, which was also known as Zaire from 1971 to 1997, the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko adopted the policy of authenticité, which sought to eradicate any vestiges of colonialism and the influence of Western culture in an attempt to consolidate national identity. This had serious consequences for LASAP, which had very visible connections to Europe and the Congo's colonial history. Zairian males were required to abandon any Western forms of clothing in favor of the abacoste, a tunic derived from the Mao-style clothing of China. Supporters of Mobutu condemned sapeurs as public nuisances and often had them beaten up and removed from public areas. Despite opposition from the government, LASAP persisted through the policy of authenticity, in great part due to the popularization of the movement by the influential and famous musician Papa Wemba. Through the outfits that he wore whilst performing on stage, Papa Wemba popularized the SAP look and solidified it as a distinctly Congolese form of fashion. More recently, LASAP has been embraced as a part of the Congo's culture, with restrictions on clothing having been lifted with the end of the authenticity policy and sapeurs being permitted to associate freely. The leaders of LASAP are also pushing for their fashion to be officially recognized as part of Congolese national heritage. The largest development in SAP culture has undoubtedly been the inclusion of women. Known as sapeuses, these women adopt the same styles as their male counterparts and are included equally in expression of the SAP lifestyle. LASAP is more than a loose conglomerate of elegantly dressed people. Instead, it is an organized community, with different groups arranging regular meetups to show off their latest outfits and celebrate each other looking dapper. Sapeurs also relish any opportunity to show off in front of their wider communities, regularly stopping to pose for passers-by and bringing joy to both themselves and others in doing so. There are also several guidelines that sapeurs are expected to conform to. Sapeurs must wear no more than 3 colors at once, so they must coordinate their wardrobes rather than throwing any clothing together. Sapeurs are also encouraged to maintain an easygoing demeanor so that they are always bringing happiness to those around them and allowing everyone to shed their troubles. This affects the way they move and talk, not just what they wear. Sapeurs avoid serious topics such as politics in conversation and are always smiling to ensure that they spread positivity. By carefully considering their mannerisms and not just their clothing, sapeurs transform themselves into a spectacle, wanting to be seen by all around them and strutting around like they are rock stars. Importantly, it is not a display of wealth, but of self-expression. Sapeurs do not wish to show themselves off to flaunt their possessions, but to share their passion with each other and the wider community. Whereas we might expect the parading of expensive clothing to be done in an exclusionary fashion that sparks jealousy and spitefulness, La Sape is a movement which spreads happiness and relaxation. Although the earliest adherents to La Sape were the elite, over time the subculture has become comprised mostly of the urban working class. Although their passion is an expensive one, sapeurs make little money, working as electricians, gardeners, taxi drivers, and so on. Even though many of them live in poverty, sapeurs are willing to save up all their money to buy new designer clothes so that they can continue to pursue their hobby. This is indicative of the crucial importance of La Sape to its followers. They are willing to spend all the money they can to dress well, foregoing the chance to save up for things like cars or houses so that they can fund their lifestyle. The fact that La Sape is so financially demanding can cause tension with family members and the wider community, who sometimes disapprove of what they see as frivolous spending. However, for the sapeurs, it is a price worth paying, as it allows them to redefine themselves in bold, elegant colors despite their meager circumstances. It is this refusal to accept personal circumstances that is so key to the appeal of La Sape. From its earliest days, La Sape has subverted external perceptions of Africans and allowed themselves to renegotiate their identities in the most extravagant terms. Even though La Sape is ostensibly apolitical, since discussion of such serious topics would be unfashionable, the movement has always had a political character because of its subversiveness. Whether they are challenging racist colonial narratives, authoritarianism, gender norms, or just the mundanity of everyday life, the followers of La Sape have always been determined to make themselves seen in the most unambiguous terms, demanding to be seen through their boldness. Sapeurs refuse to be viewed as inferior for any reason, proudly displaying their African identity by remastering Western culture for their own purposes, and refusing to be cast as the pitied, poverty-stricken stereotype that Africans are so often reduced to by Western perspectives. Papa Wemba interpreted this transformation of European dandyism into a unique African identity best, saying that white people invented the clothes, but Africans make an art of it. Women have also taken advantage of the subversive nature of La Sape to demand visibility for themselves. Being just as capable of dressing elegantly as sapeurs, sapesses have attacked gendered power dynamics to show that they are just as worthy of being celebrated and of unashamed self-expression as their male counterparts. Notably, they do not wear dresses or other feminine clothing, choosing instead to dress in the same attire as men, emphasizing their complete equality. Therefore, La Sape allows sapesses to subvert both their material reality and the gendered forms of inequality that they experience. Central to all these different dynamics of subversion is the refusal to be externally defined. Sapeurs reject any labels that they do not choose for themselves and use their impossible-to-ignore displays to insist on a recognition and celebration of the individual, no matter what their lives are like when they take off their dandy outfits. Ultimately, this refusal to let outside perspectives define the individual is also a refusal to be stripped of humanity. By sporting such elegant fashion, even though their salaries would normally mean that these clothes shouldn't be available to them, sapeurs illustrate that it doesn't matter what one's personal circumstances are, they can still be elegant, beautiful, and respected. These qualities are therefore intrinsic and not bestowed by fortune or race. In this way, La Sape is necessarily a political statement that asserts African humanity, which has so long been denied by Western stereotypes and colonial legacy. Poverty-stricken Africans do not exist merely as the objects of Western sympathy, but as equally elegant, refined, and proud people who have their own passions, their own joy, and their own identity.